You heard her voice now.
I heard it.
There you go. Welcome back to Virginia Free Interviews the Candidates. My name is Chris Saxman, Executive Director of Virginia Free. I'm pleased and proud to present to the Virginia Free audience Lizzie Drucker-Basch, who is running for House of Delegates in the 56th District, the district of retiring delegate Peter Farrell. Lizzie, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lizzie. As you said, I am a real estate developer. I'm working presently on a project in Jackson Ward. It's the old Mason's Lodge, and we are renovating and working on that, making it into apartments. I especially like working in a neighborhood such as Jackson Ward, which is up and coming and needs a little extra economic boost. And so that was part of why we chose it. The other part of why I chose it was because I don't know, I just have a fondness for that neighborhood. I'm the mom of three kids, two
Well,
of whom have a pretty serious autoimmune disease, which was what initially got me socially active. I didn't feel as though the insurance companies played fair. You pay for a certain level of care, and then to have, when you most need it, have them turn you down is just heartbreaking. Um, so that compelled me to get involved a lot. Um, I have lived in this district for, I guess we moved here when I was pregnant with my youngest, so about 15 years now, but have been in the Richmond area for about 20. And I've been involved in all kinds of things. Right now, I'm serving on the Disability Law Center of Virginia Foundation Board.
okay.
I won the Virginia Binswanger Young Leadership Award and have worked for the Weinstein JCC and Jewish Federation pretty extensively, and the Holocaust Education Committee. So that's a little bit about me. If I missed anything, feel free to
No,
ask.
that's great. That's a great introduction, and of course, the operative question that everyone gets and should get is, why are you running for the House of Delegates?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I think it's a really critically important thing to do for two reasons. One is a Democrat has not run in this district since 2009. So therefore, Democrats have had absolutely no chance for representation in this district, and that has to change. I don't like to look at the race as whether it's winnable or not winnable. A Democrat should be available to, forward a Democratic platform in every race. And if we're not there, we can't win. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason is I don't feel like the General Assembly has been working. I don't feel like it's been focusing on the issues that really matter to us, the quality of life issues, the economic issues, the things that impact people on a day-to-day basis. A lot of the issues have been very ideological and don't have any practical implications for your life or my life. And that to me is an unacceptable use of our tax dollars. So those are two of the biggest reasons. I also feel like I have a pretty good feel for pragmatism and what makes sense and what to let go of and what to really, really fight for. So those are my big reasons.
Okay, well, those are great, wonderful, valid reasons to get involved. I mean, I just full disclosure, I was in the House of Delegates for 8 years, so I
Okay.
understand the process by which you go, hey, I want to get in there and do something, whether you're still in there or considering it for the first time. So let's stick with the passion, I guess, the passion issue you brought to the fore, healthcare reform. You mentioned
Yeah.
it on your social media pages, and that's what you led with here, relative to your children. Tell us about that, and what do you want to try to achieve in the General Assembly?
Yeah. So the question, I think, has been what is going to happen to healthcare on the national stage? And that is really important. However, it's my opinion that Virginia has to behave as a firewall. So, regardless of what happens in Washington, we have a certain level of standards that we have in the Commonwealth that are adhered to by healthcare insurance companies. And so keeping the protections, the consumer protections of the ACA is really important to me. Um, the number of people on the exchanges, and I do think the exchanges do great work, is far smaller than what we enjoy collectively as a nation through the consumer protections. And so, regardless of what happens in Washington, I want to make sure that those consumer protections stay in place. Another thing I would like to do is because healthcare or health insurance companies negotiate with the state that they're working in, it's really important to me that Virginia say, you know what, if you want to come play in our state and make your money here, there are some rules you have to follow. So, for example, when I was dealing with my children's illness, I was told by a doctor who presumably was on break from a golf game 5 states away that the necessary treatment for my children was actually unnecessary. And there's nothing more frustrating than not being able to get a family member the help that they need. So I want to make sure that the rules are fair. If you pay in for care, you are able to access that care, and that just seems like good business and a good way of doing things.
Okay. Anything else in the healthcare realm before we transfer to different issues?
I mean, I think it would be remiss to maybe not, to say I don't want. I do want.
It's
to
a big
make sure
field.
that we
I mean, it's just a big field.
It is a big field. It's a big field.
Right,
1/6 of the economy.
Yeah.
But I think we're missing out. We're missing the boat on Medicaid expansion. And
okay, let's talk about that. You're supporting that?
I do support that, and for a bunch of reasons. There's two big categories that it falls under. One of them is sort of a humanitarian field. Who are we to say that some people get to access quality health care and other people do not? That's one side of the issue. The other side of the issue is, we've paid in $2 billion to the federal government for Medicaid expansion, and we've gotten nothing for it. And economically speaking, there are smaller hospitals that are suffering as a result of that. There are 400,000 people in Virginia who do not have coverage as a result of the wage gap, which I assume, everybody, your listeners, understand what the wage gap is.
Pretty much they do, but I think what's happened over time is some of these critical components to the conversation have dissipated with the conversation moving towards replace and repeal. And I think some members, some people in the public writ large also didn't want to expand a quote unquote entitlement. So, I mean, talk about that as far as how you see those in the conversation. You took a more you led with pragmatism, and a lot of times in politics you have to compromise. So, talk about how you would get there.
Okay, so that's actually a great point. And to be totally truthful with you, with the way that the Republicans are posturing, I don't know. I don't know how you get there, because they're leading off with waste and they're leading off with fraud, and those things just don't bear out factually. So it's hard to come to some common ground when you're all not dealing with the same set of facts. So what I will tell you is, what is important to me is that I think the Republicans do understand, and you can kind of hook them in a little bit with this, is there's a big importance or big onus on personal responsibility in the Republican, doctrine, if you will. We're asking people to be personally responsible. A friend of mine lives in Virginia Beach. She's a full-time waitress. She goes on the exchange to get health insurance. She's paying her taxes. She's doing what she can do to support herself. But she makes too much to get Medicaid, and she makes too little to get a subsidy to buy on the exchanges. So we're disincenting taking good care of yourself by holding down a full-time job and saying, well, you can hold down a full-time job, but don't make too much, or you can't access Medicaid, or it doesn't really make too much sense. So I think I would come at it from the perspective of making people self-reliant.
Those are great points, and I often challenge members of either party with what the other party thinks on this issue. And I guess I'm going to come back to you with what the Democrats think, and maybe this is a way to get to that pragmatic end game. It's like, because they want to expand Medicaid and they think it's a winning issue, and very well could be electorally in this upcoming election, with the changes not occurring in DC. The game always changes. Is it a more compact message so that the public can absorb it, to say, look, we understand we have a difference of opinion on Medicaid expansion, but the federal government can't seem to make up its mind. Let's use the money now to serve people who are in medical need. Is that a better argument to make across the board rather than getting down the rabbit holes of 400, all the different things?
Yeah, well, yes, and I think that the Democrats are doing a pretty good job of that. That we have for the last, what is it? Uh, as long as the ACA has been in effect, we have given the money back, and it's gone to other states. So I think that we've made that argument that we're paying in, our money is being dispersed and spent around the country, but not here. And so, yes, I agree with you. I think that while we have the option of expanding Medicaid and having, it goes from being, for the indigent, we pay 50% of whatever, the costs are for Medicaid. If we take the ACA money, we pay 10%. So to
Okay,
me,
well, that leads into a different Republican rebuttal, if you will, and I don't want to get into that because they say it opens up a gap in that you have to fund the budget from somehow. And the government said, no, we'll cover the remaining 10% anyway. So I'm just trying to get to a pragmatic conclusion where you can say, look, folks, let's solve this problem. The federal government can't seem to make up its mind, and we still have, like you said, 400,000 Virginians that we could be serving. I don't want to lead you in this conversation, but you seem to be of the pragmatic view, and I just didn't know where that delineates in your thinking.
I think that's the way to go. I think that's the way to go, to look at the facts and say, while we have this opportunity, we take it.
Okay. K through 12, we just talked before we went on live that you're in the adjacent school district. You're
Yes.
Our rivals, Deep Run Wildcats.
Yeah.
Deep Run Wildcats. K through 12, what are your thoughts on that? What should happen?
Well, there's a lot to talk about. This is another firewall issue for me in terms of whatever happens in Washington stays in Washington. I think House Bill 610 is so destructive. That's the Betsy DeVos plan for charter schools and vouchers. As it stands right now, our public schools are way underfunded. The funding was cut during the recession, which I think we all can understand. However, it's never been brought back up to levels. And so we're down about $628 per student across the state. That's not acceptable. We need great outcomes, and it shouldn't be a means test in the United States to get a great education. That's just not fair. So I think, in the United States that I grew up in, it was always put out there that education is the great equalizer. That's what makes our country inherently equitable. If you get a good education and you work really hard, you can be socially mobile. But we're seeing that depending on where you live, it really makes a big difference as to what kind of education you get. And, I was kind of blown away that Dave Bratt said at his town hall meeting, well, if you don't like your school, move. Our schools in Twin Hickory are great. Well, that option is not open to most people. They can't just pick up and move. And that shouldn't be the measure of whether you get a good education in our country.
And yet people will move to better school districts. When they move and relocate, what's the first thing a parent asks a realtor? Where are the good schools, right?
Absolutely, but we're not all in the financial position to do that.
Right. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And trying to relate it back to the Medicaid funding gap, if the federal government does, offer 100% reimbursement and then drop to 90, which you were willing to do, it would create a funding gap. The Republicans say of a couple $100 million, and that would largely come from education, be it K-12, higher education, or wherever. How would you make up that funding gap? Would you support increasing taxes to get that?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because in Henrico County, especially, we've already increased the meals tax to pay for schools, and yet we're still paying over 50% as a locality. So I guess the question is, at what point have you tapped out that tax base, right? So how important is it to the state? I don't know if you're familiar with the index by which we fund schools,
Yes.
in you're laughing.
No, I know it very well.
Okay, so the index by which we fund schools is not necessarily a fair index. So for example, in my district, I've got Goochland County, which pays 70% just in its locality in terms of what it owes. So should you tax them more? Like, where's the breaking point? I
So
feel,
you would change the composite index?
I don't know if I would necessarily change the composite index. Well, no, yeah, I would change the composite index. I think that the
Okay.
state, yeah, I would.
Go girl.
I
Get in there.
Thank you. I mean, I don't want to hedge anymore. It's ridiculous. The state has got to invest in educating children, and it should not all fall to localities. It's just not feasible. And if we are not willing, in the birthplace of Jefferson, to educate our children in a meaningful way, what are we doing? I mean,
Okay.
what is is it a Confucius saying that, if you want to plan for a year, you grow rice. If you want to plan for a lifetime, you educate your children. So that's part of, in my opinion, what's gotten us into the political climate that we're in. Our electorate isn't as educated, isn't as involved, and hasn't been as civically oriented as it could be should we educate people adequately.
Okay. So changing composite index politically, that's a heavy lift. I'm just going to be
Yeah,
blunt with
no,
you. But
I get it, but why not
this is
shoot for the
no
moon at
no
this
this is
point?
great. This is great stuff. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love people think outside the box and are willing to say, yeah, I would change that. And I guess the question back to you would be, what would be the method by which you fund local schools from the state government?
You know what? That's an excellent question, and one that I don't readily have the answer to.
Great
I
answer.
wish
That's a
I
great
could.
answer.
Yeah, I wish
That's
I
a
could be brilliant and say I thought this through completely from beginning to end, but that would take some research and some work.
No, and Lizzie, that's a great answer, and I encourage every candidate to do the same thing. If they don't know, say that you don't know. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. In fact, there's a lot of good in that. And this is the part of what we do. It's about educating candidates on about those nuances, because when you go down those certain roads, something else is going to have to be considered, and that's a
Mhm.
part of it. And that's why we do this to show that in our candidates. Again, that's that was a very good answer in my estimation. What everyone else thinks, I have
Thank
no
you.
idea.
I'll take
I think some people might be upset with touching the composite index, but that's not my problem. Um,
it.
um, higher education. What are your thoughts on higher education? Accessibility, affordability, availability. Those are big issues.
Yes. Um, and so, I was just reading about the UVA Board of Visitors meeting and them trying to keep the increases down to a relatively decent level. And I think that's happening in state universities across our Commonwealth. And um, it is a real problem. The costs of higher education have skyrocketed, and taking on a lot of debt it's a hard call to make, because are you going to recoup that? The way that we looked at college for our children, and I've got one in college right now, and we said, listen, this is a return on investment type of a deal. If you go to X college for dance, which is what she went to college for, are you going to recoup your investment if you get a job dancing out of college? And she was like, wow, okay. So we, said, let's look in state. And if you get out of state, an out of state school, let's look at how we can swing that maybe with some scholarships. So it is a difficult situation. I do not, I do not, I think the Board of Visitors have a tough trial ahead of them, trying to make sure that they can meet the increases without raising tuition so that it's out of reach. The other thing that comes up all the time is, should we make community college free? And that, that's a big, heavy lift. I don't know if that's the answer to college issues. What I do know is we have to have some level of education past K through 12, whether they be technical skills through apprenticeships, or finding ways to get people into coding jobs, because college is not for everyone, and we have to have different options for different levels. I think one of the issues, one of the biggest problems that has been is that up until this point, people have been saying, you graduate from high school and you go to college. That's not realistic for everyone. So, those are really the issues I think we have to look at. I don't have any fantastic answers for those. But I think we need, as a state, to keep funding adequately those schools as well, because that's what makes Virginia a wonderful place to live. We have one of the best public schools, universities in the nation.
Absolutely. So what do you think of Congressman Perriello's suggestion to make community college free?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I do. I don't know how he's going to do it. But I think it's a great idea. If the makeup of the General Assembly stays as it is, it's going to be very difficult for him to get that by. I would love to see it. I think that would be wonderful. I think, it would be a definite game changer and shift the paradigm for how we look at schooling, that K through 12 isn't where you stop, that you can continue on if you choose. But we'll see what happens with that.
Well, it is obviously a budget item because they're not going to give it away for free. I mean, you can't pay your professors at community college nothing. They're not going to do it for free. There's a cost.
That is true.
So,
however,
I don't think they've come up with I don't think they've come up with a cost yet. So I don't know where the money would come from. Is that something that you would consider a tax for?
So the way that New York did it, and I don't know if this is Perriello's plan, but the way that New York did it, because they just rolled out that they want to make certain, their state universities tuition free, is they say, if you take advantage of this program, you must stay in the state and be a, taxpayer for X amount of years. So right. Their plan is to recoup on the back end. Obviously, they've done the numbers, and maybe that works. I haven't really sat down with the whole law and looked at it.
Typically, that's called a blood tax.
Yeah.
That's what it's just in policy is what they call it. You got to stay. I mean, it's the Army does it, the Navy does it. We pay for your education. You got to stay in the Army, the Navy for X amount of years.
But you know what? If that's how you get through college and that's a way to fund yourself without taking on any debt, then maybe that's worth doing. I think you'd have to look at what the participation rate is and to see if you could recoup it based on how many people participate. But
right. It doesn't sound like to me you're in support of a general tax to pay for this. That's how we started the community college system, as a 1 cent sales tax.
Yeah,
and that's what funded the startup of the community college system. It sounds like to me you don't want to go down that road.
Well, so I don't want to go down that road, and I think you said we can't pay the teachers nothing. My campaign manager teaches at J. Sargent Reynolds. And we pay them almost nothing. I mean, she makes $2,500 per class that she teaches. And I was like, is that per class, like per day? Like, how can that be? And she's like, no, that's per semester. And I thought, woo. So
that's what the House of Delegates makes. That's what the House of Delegates makes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else in education before we jump off? Pre-K?
No, I think we've covered a lot of it.
Okay, good. Last on your website, you had economic opportunity, and you talked about investing in an apartment project, I believe an apartment project or a housing project in Jackson Ward, was it?
That's right.
Okay, so give us your thoughts on economic opportunity, how we create it, what can the state do? You led off by saying the General Assembly wasn't doing what you would describe as its job. What would be the General Assembly's job in economic advancement, growth, opportunity?
Well, so the way I look at this, especially in my district, which I've thought about a lot, is I have a lot of rural areas in my district. And one of the biggest issues, and in far western Henrico County, we don't experience this because we have access to several options for high-speed internet. I could be connected through Comcast, I could be connected through Verizon. So it's sort of not on a lot of people's radar, but expanding broadband would go a really long way to creating economic opportunity in rural areas. Right now, if a call center wanted to relocate to Louisa County, that would be impossible because they don't have the infrastructure to do that. And then that sort of gets into education too. you're not able to utilize that tool for education purposes. But sticking with economic opportunity, that has got to be just basic. And I've been looking at various ways of implementing that so that all of the rural areas, so that the whole state is covered. That's one way to increase economic opportunity. The second one that I'm looking at is rural areas need stimulus in the same way. We use tax incentives and grants to get large corporations to relocate to the state all the time, which is good. But what if we funneled some of that money into incenting people to stay in rural communities? People live there not because they have to, they live there because they like it and they want to stay there and they want to raise their families there, and some of their families want to stay. But if you're looking for economic opportunities, you're not going to find them in some of those rural areas. So it causes a vicious cycle of saying, okay, we don't really have the economic opportunities, so people are leaving, and therefore we don't have economic opportunities because we don't have enough people to take the jobs. So that's something that's near and dear to me in terms of economic opportunity, to make rural areas as important as the cities and exurbs and suburbs. So that's something I'm really very interested in figuring out ways to do that.
Okay, so in the realm of economic development, rural economic development, it's a very difficult prospect having come from the Shenandoah Valley. I understand that. Should we get very aggressive in trying, because a lot of people are moving out of the rural areas and into suburban, exurban, urban areas. Should we get very aggressive with our economic incentives and even consider tax rate reductions for those areas?
Yes, I think so. And the reason I think so is because what have we done for these people? I mean, there is a reason for staying in these places, but that people want to be there. Right now, we're not giving people the economic opportunity to stay there. That's the first thing. And secondly, as a Democrat, I think it is critically important that we help people out, because there is a lack of equity and possibility in these areas. We have ignored largely rural areas and have not put our money where our mouth is and have not shown up in the way that we should. And so I think, yes, we do that. And because the level of poverty is unreal in some of these Southside Virginia places that are not even in my district, but it's unreal. And the access to medical care is not there because economically, there's no money. There's no money, there's no industry, there's not much of anything. And I find that that's an inequity that I'm not comfortable with.
I just personally speaking here, not for our organization, I just think that there's an opportunity, a historic opportunity to throw open the door, if you will, and say, let's create this economic opportunity out there and just give all kinds of incentives to create and have that creative American ingenuity go in and just start
absolutely
getting after, just having fun with, creating jobs and creating dreams. And anyway, I'm not going to belabor that one. Another important issue of that's come up that in the gubernatorial primary for your party is the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Where do you stand on the Atlantic Coast Pipeline?
Well, so that's a toughie because nobody likes a pipeline. I mean, I don't want it in my yard. You don't want it in your yard, but it's coming.
I might take a different tack, because if our farm, we had a conversation in our family, if it comes to our farm, we're taking the money. Well, we don't raise cattle on it.
And that might be, that maybe that is the economic opportunity that some people are looking for, but I think that that's not necessarily the norm. And the other issue is too, yes, there are some people who may look at it that way, but there are other people who look at it as, one, you're infringing on my property rights, that I have the right to use my land in any way I see fit. And if you don't allow for it, then eminent domain can take over. That's an issue. The other issue is at these compression stations that are along the pipelines, a lot of health issues happen there. So, it's kids, they see spikes in asthma, they see spikes in all kinds of behavioral issues because there are leaks. So, but all of that being said, I can be against it all day long. It's coming. is happening. So how do we do it safely, and how do we do it responsibly, and how do we make sure that we're prepared for every eventuality that comes along with having a pipeline going through?
Okay, so not to put words in your mouth, and please correct me if I'm wrong. My sense is that you would prefer it not to be there, but if it's going to happen, let's make sure we get it done the most environmentally sensitive way possible. Is that
Absolutely.
fair? Okay, okay. But you wouldn't vote in favor of it if you had a choice.
I don't think I would. I think the more I've learned about pipelines, the more skittish I am. But again, let's go back to my pragmatism. They exist. There are many more than we even know about. The ones that get the most press are the ones that are presently being built, but there's tons of infrastructure under the ground that many people are just not aware that are even there.
Fair to say that you're open-minded to learning more about the process and all that goes with pipelines.
Always.
Okay.
Always.
That's all anyone can ever ask in the world of politics and policy. Lizzie, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, getting to know you.
Thank
Wish you
you.
the very best on the campaign. Any final thoughts you want to offer us before we sign off here?
No, but I'm open to comments. I'm open to questions. I'm open. You can reach me anytime. I am happy to hear from the members of your organization, and
okay.
So you're welcome to share my contact information.
Okay, and that email address is, I love this, Lizzie@bashful.com, BASCHFUL.com. Love that.
That's
love
right.
that.
Thank you.
Do you have a website up?
I do. It's Lizzie for Virginia, spelled out FOR, .com. And I'm on Facebook.
Spelled out Virginia? Lizzie
spelled
for
out
Virginia?
for and spelled out Virginia. Yep.
Virginia.com.
Lizzie for Virginia. I'm also on Facebook at Lizzie for Virginia, and on Twitter at Lizzie for, the number 4, Virginia.
And the method of your nomination, is it primary?
It is a primary, June 13th.
June 13th. And I believe you're kicking off tonight?
Tonight we have my Henrico County kickoff at Malabar. April 26th, I've got my Louisa County kickoff at Floozy's Pie Shop. So that should be awesome.
Floozy's. Nice.
Floozy's a great name. Yeah.
Lizzie at Floozy's. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? Lizzie, it's been great talking to you. We wish you the very best on the campaign. If we can answer any questions for you about economics, business issues, please feel free to contact us on a confidential basis, and we'll do the best we can to help you along. Okay?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You take care. Bye-bye now.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.